Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest. But before I do that, here's a quote I picked just for this episode. Spend each day trying to be a little wiser than you were when you woke up. Charlie Munger. My good friend, Ken Jordan, is here to join me today. Over 20 years and 9 months, if I'm correct, maybe a couple days, couple hours in there. Ken's been helping people achieve home ownership in this country, in this great country. But besides all of that, he's been a supporter of Culture Matters since I could remember that I was doing this. In fact, we met years ago at a diner in South Philly with 30 Days of Thought. And ever since then, I found a friend in Ken, philosopher, someone that cares about culture, someone that cares about relationships and his team. And I'm excited to have you on the show today. Shout out to you, my friend.
Thank you, Jay. I'm very excited to be here, following in the footsteps of some impressive guests that you've had on before. And I love hanging out. I love talking to you. So this is just another opportunity to do just that.
Yeah, essentially outside of one job, mortgage was what you did out of school. You went for marketing.
Yes.
For those that don't know what a mortgage is, why are you so passionate about it? Because you are. I mean, I've known you for years. You care about the process, you care about the people you serve. Why? And then what is it?
So why mortgage is a good question. There's an old saying that a salesman is always a salesman. It's not the product, it's the salesman. And I think that ultimately, at a very young age, I knew that I enjoyed the process of selling. And when I say the process of selling, some people, there's an old negative connotation of sales, which is I'm going to convince you, manipulate you to take money out of your pocket and put it into my pocket, and then the new definition that I live by is that, I'm going to rely on my instincts, my ability to communicate, my enthusiasm to convince you to do what's in your best interest. And coming out of school, I was selling ads in the Yellow Pages, and I was passionate about selling ads in the Yellow Pages. So, I mean, if you can get passionate about selling ads in the Yellow Pages, you can get passionate about anything.
Why were you?
Why was I passionate about selling? I felt like I was making a difference then. I was 21 years old, and I was meeting with business owners, and I was showing them what the Yellow Pages could do for their business, and relying on my marketing background to help elevate the Yellow Page ads and products that they were maximizing. And I enjoyed it. It was hard work, which I also enjoy. Never afraid to show my work ethic, and it helped the people that I was surrounded by. It was a young, energetic group of salespeople, and we had fun too on top of it all. And it was the success that I had in the Yellow Page business that my father-in-law and mentor and mortgage professional saw what I was doing and decided, hey, if you can sell Yellow Pages, you can sell mortgages. And what first intrigued me about the business was the fact that I had far more control over, I guess, my schedule and my lifestyle, or at least it seemed that way. And that was attractive to a 22, 23-year-old that was putting a suit on every morning and driving out to the office and 5 days a week. And, the idea that I could work from home was not really a thing back then. But it was definitely attractive to me. But what I really learned that I love about the mortgage business, it's just complex enough that not everybody can do it, that people actually need help with it, but you don't have to be a brain surgeon either. I also enjoy the fact that there's a transactional nature to the mortgage business, in that you get to work with a lot of different people, but then there's also a relationship aspect to the mortgage business, where you're developing relationships with your referral partners that can blossom into true friendships. And those relationships become meaningful, and you begin to pull for each other. I want to help my referral partners do well, and they want to help me do well. And in the meantime, we help as many people as they know and as many people as I know do well. So I always say to the people on my team, the people that I lead, that it's the greatest business in the world, and I would never do anything else.
Wow. What was it like because I'm thinking in 2008, you're in the business 5 years. I would think that you started to have some stability. Did you? And then was that stripped from you, or were you still trying to get traction and it was an opportunity for you? How'd you get through that time?
2008, what a lot of people forget, was really 2011. 2008 was when the market, the subprime market, started to unravel, and obviously companies were going out of business left and right. It helped at the time that I was with a relatively large company, but it didn't change the fact that when bailouts were handed out, my company, which I think was 11th National City Mortgage at the time on the list of companies, did not get any money from the bailout, and they were subsequently acquired shortly thereafter by PNC. But the real trouble in the market hit in 2011, and when you talk about getting through something, that was my first experience where I was actually afraid. 2010 to 2011, my income dropped 65%.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I had a family, a wife, a house. Like, I wasn't just a bachelor. So seeing that happen was scary. And behind me, I'm actually gonna. I know you can't see this, but right behind me, there's a poem that's hanging on my wall that my wife gave me back in 2011. And it's a famous poem. It's called "Don't Quit." You can look it up. But when she gave that to me, it was one of the most inspiring things that I've ever experienced, because the power of someone who's relying on you is now breathing back into you, that you can do something and not to quit. Because I was looking at other options at the time. What else can I do? Because this is not working out. So with my wife's encouragement, staying in the business, I partnered up with a coach. His name is Clement Pepe, who I worked with then for the next 11 years. And I was one step ahead of, the shark's mouth, as people were going out of business, as loan officers were getting out of the business. I felt like I was just staying one step ahead. And I, at that point, I leaned into a marketing platform that helped real estate agents list and market and sell their properties with, at the time, were unknown technologies like QR codes and single property websites, and agents were just learning about social media. And I was kind of in that demographic where I was far more comfortable with it, and I would bring ideas and teach social media. And that's one of the transformations of my business at the time, was finding out and learning that I'm at my best when I'm teaching. And I began to adopt that in my business model, which is to go out and not just ask for business, so to speak, but to teach and educate and help borrowers and agents in any way that I could, any topic that I felt like I had some level of authority on. And then slowly but surely things picked up, and then we rode another pretty positive wave from there.
You think you would have been as successful in the last handful of years had you not gone through that struggle then?
I don't know, but what I can tell you is, having gone through that struggle has prepared me for what's going on right now, which our industry is seeing a production drop off that's catastrophic, and there are lenders and loan officers that aren't going to make it through. People who were doing 10 loans, 15 loans a month are doing 1 loan a month. Having the ability to draw on my experience from then, to know that it does get better, and save your money. That was a lesson I learned in 2011. That yes, I'm incredibly optimistic about the near future of the mortgage business, knowing that we are going to get through it. It just happens to be a really difficult time for agents and for loan officers.
What are some of the similarities and what are some of the differences, would you say, having lived through both?
So the biggest difference between what we experienced in 2008, 9, and 11, and what we're dealing with now, we were suffering a lack of credit back in 2008, 9, and 10, where products were restricted, credit requirements were tight, and borrowers were being frozen out of the home buying process because of various aspects of their credit profile. Partly because there was some irresponsible lending being done leading up to that, and that was the natural reaction. With this, it's a capacity issue in that there's not enough inventory, and there are a lot of professionals vying for their piece of the pie. And through 2020, 21, 22, there was an explosion of need for mortgage professionals, both in the fulfillment side and on the sales side. And I think it just takes a little time before the market naturally kind of finds its balance and how many people are needed in this environment, both in the real estate side and on the mortgage side.
What would you say is keeping the culture going now? Team, people, because
hope, progress. I had a conversation with my team today. I'll often, when we think about what we want to accomplish, we ask ourselves, what does success look like? And when we try and visualize, and even those of us that kind of really buy into visualization as a tactic for achieving our goals, we try and visualize what success looks like. And I think the message right now for the people that are in the business is, don't worry about what success looks like, but try and visualize what progress looks like. And there's a Tony Robbins video out where he talks about progress equals happiness, and it's so true. It became so true for me when I heard it, and I probably heard it a million times, but recently I heard it and it landed. Progress is really what it's about. I talk about everybody who knows me. I talk about my weight, and I struggle with my weight, losing weight and gaining weight. And in 2000, when we first met, Jay, was through a group called the 5 a.m.ers, if you remember.
Yeah, shout out to Jake Dreyfus and
Jake and Sky.
Chris. Yes, yeah, and no, it was had the building there.
Yeah.
Who else was in there?
It turned out to be a lot of people.
Sky was about to come on the podcast, and Jake's coming back. I haven't seen him in a long time. He's gonna come on the show.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I would love to see those guys.
I try to stay in touch,
It was a fantastic time in my life where I started to find discipline that I didn't have before, getting up early, doing things in the morning, and really getting after my day. And it allowed me to really lose a lot of weight at that time frame. And I just remember how happy I was on that path.
For those that aren't familiar, what was the purpose of the group?
So the purpose of the group was to get up early, right? Getting up early requires discipline, and it also gives you time. By getting up early, you have time to accomplish things in your day that the day usually gets in the way of, and it removes excuses. And I think that ultimately, for those of us that were really getting into it at the time, the discipline was carrying throughout the course of the day. The time was used to exercise. The time was used to meditate, read, write, all of the things that we say we should do, but we don't have the time to do. It removes that obstacle. And it was transformational for me. And people in my life all know how important that time period was in my life. And I just, so even in today's struggle, we can't look at what success looks like. For me, success looks like $50 million a year in overall production. I can't really see that far right now. I need to see the progress. I need to set the more incremental goal and then work towards that progress. And when you are progressing towards a goal, the birds chirp and the grass is greener, and it's just you feel better about a lot of things. So I think, to answer your question, that's what is getting most of us through, is just recognizing where we are and then trying to find ways where we can get better.
I see you doing a lot of podcasts or TV shows on social media. So how long has that been going on? Is that one of the ways that you're keeping momentum?
It is. I think that people are a source of joy for me. interacting, hanging out, talking, this kind of stuff, especially. I do a monthly cable access show that like 7 or 8 people watch. It's really cool. Called Money Matters, Money Matters TV. And then I also do my 5-minute interviews with real estate professionals with the hope that we can elevate the conversation around why working with the right real estate agent matters. And it also helps for the agents to kind of fine tune, their messages, and what's working for the top agents might be something that that would resonate with them. So it's kind of got dual benefit. But yeah, doing those things is activity begets activity, and having that structured into my calendar where I'm making those calls, recording them and editing them and doing that is also it's a creative process, which is also an important part of who I am. When I'm creating, I always feel better. I always feel more invigorated. So that is part of my creative outlet as well.
What have you learned about yourself from adding that?
I said to someone just this morning, you don't have to be religious. You don't have to believe in God necessarily, but if you're someone that believes in an infinite wisdom, in a universe, and in a higher power, I think that in a creator, let's say, I think that when you are being creative and when you are creating, you are getting a glimpse, you're getting a taste of what it's like to be the creator. And I think that there's a connection there. There's a spiritual connection there between when you're out there and you're building or you're creating something to that higher power. And I think that's one of the things I learned about myself throughout this process is that I enjoy that connection. I enjoy that connection with the higher power when I am creating, because I'm kind of acting, I'm kind of doing that myself.
What are people most afraid of right now that you're working with? Like, what's the mindset? What are some of the roadblocks that you're seeing, peer-to-peer?
Peer-to-peer, whether it be lender or real estate agent. Stagnation can be very frustrating, and decline can be depressing. I think that the fear is that kind of like when you hurt yourself, it hurts for the first minute because you don't know how long that pain or how much worse that pain's going to get. And then that fear subsides, and then you're just left with the pain, and it's manageable. I think it's similar in this situation. I think people aren't sure how long this is going to go on for. And I think that unknown, that is what is creating a lot of fear. But I also think the frustration of, again, going back to what I was saying earlier, preconceived ideas of what success looks like and expectations are not being met there, I think is creating a lot of frustration. But it's also pushing people too out of their comfort zones, doing things that they haven't done before. I have a loan officer who is on my team that is having a phenomenal year, not because the market is luckier in his area. He's having a phenomenal year because he made a decision to try new things and push himself out of the comfort zone and take action, towards the goals. And he's not closing as much as someone else on the team, but he's happier. He feels more, alive and hopeful. So I think that that's the biggest thing people are dealing with right now is the expectation gap, frustration, but also the fear of not knowing how long this is going to last.
Well, why buy a home now? Why not wait?
An age-old question, huh? If you talk to a real estate agent, they'll tell you it's never a bad time to buy a home. And they're usually right. If you wait until the rates come down, there are other people that are waiting till the rates come down too. So if you wait, they come into the marketplace as well, and now you're competing again with more people for the same limited inventory. Right now, we have an inventory problem. We have a supply problem. If the rates come down low enough, then maybe we will start to see some sellers make the decision to say, okay, I'll sell my house in this environment. A seller sitting on a 4% rate is not going to, or does not want to sell their house to go get another mortgage at 8%. They're just not incentivized to do so. But if rates were 5%, and maybe they'd be willing to trade in their 4% rate for a 5% rate. And I think that would open up the inventory a little bit as well. But I don't know. I don't have the answer on the supply. I don't have the real answer on the supply issue, and I don't think anybody does. I think that, as I said earlier, it's just going to take time to build through to run through the capacity in the industry. Because if you think about it, in 2023, we're going to close roughly what we closed in previous years, where people were doing just fine. There was just less people in the industry at that point, so it'll work its way out.
So that makes me think you think people are going to be leaving?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Where are they going to go?
I mean, you have to have a special set of skills to be good at being a mortgage person or a real estate professional. And I think those skills can be applied in other industries. I think that it's the natural order of things that, if a salesperson is a salesperson, it's not the product, it's the salesperson. So if there's not enough business for certain folks with these skill sets, they'll find something else to sell.
Do you think this is, are you confident that you're going to stay?
I'm confident that I'm going to make it through. Yes.
Is part of that because if I listened earlier in the conversation, you talked about the relationships you built with your referral partners. So is part of your confidence coming from the community that you've created with your partners in the industry, feeling that you're going to have business? Because
an overwhelming majority of my confidence comes from that. Having the
relationship. If you didn't have relationship, if you weren't able to keep relationships, like psychopaths, you always need new people coming in.
Right. Yes, I think that has a lot to do with it, but I also think that even as a lender or a loan officer that doesn't have a ton of relationships right now, they still have an opportunity right now to develop those relationships, especially if you think about it. Through 2021 and 2022, no one had time to go out and spend time with referral partners. You were taking the calls that were coming in, and if you're really on your A game, you were time blocking time and prioritizing the time to go out and spend time with your referral partners, which I think that the successful ones did. But now you do have time, and I think that you couple that with the fact that everyone is looking for answers, and there's fear in that, and I think that there's there's comfort in providing answers to people and providing help. One of the things we're rolling out soon is a business planning goal setting strategy that we're going to that's branded for real estate agents to help them with what's holding them back right now. And we are in very similar businesses, agents and loan officers. Our activities are important but not urgent activities are very similar. So as a mortgage person, you have the opportunity to kind of apply what you're doing and teach it to agents that have been in the business 2, 3, maybe 4 years and develop those relationships.
How have you built your relationships? Like if we were to do the 10 commandments or what, or the inversion of that, let's say you wanted to ruin all of your relationships. What would your advice be? Don't
call them. Ignore them.
Keep going. Yeah.
Get frustrated with them. Have little patience. No, I think that
this is good. This is gold.
There is a science to the relationship, but it all starts with desire. You got to really want to have these relationships. It's got to kind of be who you are to want to develop the relationships with the people in your industry. And it starts with being willing to pick up the phone and introduce yourself. I think that's step number one. You want to make sure that they know who you are. From there, that you're not everybody's cup of tea, but you might be their shot of whiskey. So be yourself. And if you're being yourself, you'll attract the people that want to be around you, which is the people that you want to work with. So be willing to introduce yourself so they know who you are. Be yourself. The ones that like you will stick around. The ones that don't like you, you won't even know their name. So know you, like you. And then the third thing is trust. You have to develop trust. And trust, not only they have to trust you know what you're talking about, but they have to trust that you have theirs and their client's best interest at heart. How you do that is by continuously making promises and delivering on those promises. And I always say small promises, small commitments are everything in this business. If I say I'm going to call you at 7:01, I'll call you at 7:01, not 7:02. It might seem like a minute infraction, but it creates a trust gap. So when you get them to know you, then you get them to like you, then you get them to trust you. From there, you begin working with them, and then it's just about having fun. And I do have fun. We have happy hours, and we have, tailgates, Phillies tailgates. We had a couple weeks ago where we get to hang out, and lunches and coffees. Some people look at that as a chore, and I say that's the best part of the job. Is to go out and spend time with the referral partners and discuss business and what's working for you and what's working for me, and how can we make introductions to each other. One of my favorite things to do is introduce agents to other agents, because everyone has something to offer. And if I can make those introductions, now there's a cross-pollination of ideas, and now this agent likes you and this agent likes you, and the only thing they have in common is that you introduced them.
So and you've been doing that for some time. Intro.
What's that?
And you make those intros, and they don't pay you.
No, and that's okay. That's okay.
No, it seems like a silly question to you and me, right? Culture, but maybe that kind of goes over people's heads. Says a lot. That's your time that you're investing in your relationships.
It all comes back eventually.
I want to learn about the you sought mentorship in a tough time.
Yes.
So there's people listening to this that may be in a tough time. Why then? That seems like a bad time to do it when you're down 65%.
It was a Wednesday in 2011, and it was cloudy. It was March. It was just not a great day. My son was trying out for the CYO baseball team, and I remember this like it was yesterday. And he was doing horrible. He was booting the ball around. I'm over on the sidelines wondering, what have I taught this kid, and why is he not doing anything that I taught him to make this baseball team? And I was just in a really bad mood. I mean, a bad mood. And my phone rings, and I figure I might as well answer it. I'm not doing anything else, and I can't stand watching this for much longer. So I answer the phone, and it's my coach, who became my coach, and he, it was bound to happen. It was meant to be. Those kind of things I believe in. So he introduced himself and said, "How are things going?" And I thought, I'll entertain this conversation. Things are going pretty crappy right now, to be honest. Well, what's going on? What's going on in your world? And I explained to him, the mortgage business is falling off a cliff. There's companies going out of business. My income's down, this and that. And he said, he thinks he can help me, and he'd love an opportunity to work with me. And I said, well, how much is it? Number one. And he said, well, how about if it doesn't work, you don't pay me. I thought, that's bold. And he says, what would you like to accomplish in the next 12 months? And
wow.
I said to him, I'd like to get back to X. When we talked earlier about success versus progress, I was just looking for progress then too. And I said, you can get me back to X income, I'll be happy. And he said, well, how about if I get you back to that income? But more importantly, before you even get there, you and I are going to look back on this phone call. We're going to laugh about how low of a number that is. I thought, okay, another bold statement. And I like this guy. And Jay, it wasn't 60 days in. I hadn't hit that number yet by any means. It wasn't 60 days in before I recognized the momentum that was building from working with him, where I said, you're right, we got to up that number, because that number's not even exciting me anymore. And it comes from the fact that as we are all pretty bright people, we know what we need to do, but we all benefit from external perspective. We get in our own way and we don't even realize that we have stuff that we brought into our adulthood from our childhood, stuff that holds us back. And it takes an honest, trustworthy person that you respect to deliver that to you in a way that you understand it and you hear it, to make those changes that are necessary. And for 11 years, he's been one of the more influential people in my life.
Wow. If someone's listening and saying, I don't need that. You know what? How do you speak some wisdom into them?
It's difficult. I think that, like a lot of things in life, you're not going to benefit from it till you're ready to benefit from it. And you have to be open and curious and willing to let go of a lot of your own preconceived notions before any kind of coaching is going to take root or resonate with you. And that's the hard part, because a lot of our thoughts and a lot of our preconceived notions, a lot of that stuff tied to our ego, and it's difficult. So I would never be able to convince someone to get a coach, but I can celebrate with someone who has gotten a coach, because I know at that moment, now I know where they're at. Now I know they see the benefits, and they're operating in a different wavelength.
It didn't take me long to realize that's BS. It took me a while to realize that if I didn't have my own advisors, I was going to become some kind of like demagogue. And you can feel it when someone's opens themselves up to having counsel, even those they give it. It's admirable. I can feel in your spirit.
We are all, especially in my business, I say we're very, very good salespeople, especially when we're selling ourselves. We could sell ourselves anything. We're willing participants in that conversation. So if you don't have that outside perspective, you'll convince yourself whatever it is you need to convince yourself to get through your day. And it's not always right. It's not always what you need to hear, and that's where the coaching comes in, because as Clement said, your best thinking got you here.
What's your take on culture today in the tougher times?
I could speak for my company in some respects that
Please.
There are many companies out there, and I try not to use the word toxic too often, because I think it's a word that's often overused right now. But that's the only way I can describe it. They're operating from a place of fear. They're operating from a place of scarcity. They're operating from a place of punitive, actions, because of how much money is being lost on a daily basis in this industry. Whereas the company I'm with, it just operates in a hopeful place. It operates, a lot of the stuff that I'm saying, I'm perfectly in alignment with my company right now, in that senior leadership from Rich down, are all, in that let's find ways to get better. We have some time, let's work on our process. Let's improve that. You have some time, work on your relationships, improve that. You have some time, work on your relationships with your teammates, improve that. And I think that's the culture, is the culture of using this time to improve anything in your life. It could be your relationship with your kids, your relationship with your wife, or relationship with God. Improve, get better every day. And that's ingrained in our culture, because it's written in our core values. And I think that culture, as I feel, and maybe you do too, that's not something you can necessarily define, but when you see it, I think that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, I think if it was easily definable, I would have gone on to do other things by now, because I would have got bored.
Right.
I would have got bored.
Very true.
But something, yes, that you can definitely feel.
Yeah.
We all know when we see it. Hey, when it comes to values, what are some of the ones that you think are important to represent who you are to your clients and who you are to your referral partners?
I think that my goal with all of my relationships, which includes my relationships with my borrowers, is to bring value. And value, but to bring value. How can I make their situation better for the sole reason that they connected with me? And it's a responsibility to take on, that you're not just going to go through the motions, that you're gonna do the extra work, so that you can help move their ball forward, whatever it happens to be. And the same goes with my real estate agents, with the referral partners that I have, is that, you know, I feel a lack of integrity if I'm not looking for ways to make their day, make their job, make their situation better because of their interaction, their relationship with me. So adding value to every relationship is an important part of who I am. And again, without any expectation of reciprocity, I think that you don't need it. If you're adding value in every relationship, then you know, it comes back to you in a lot of different ways. And I think that that's kind of what defines who I am professionally. I like to think that it defines who I am personally too, with my family and my children, my wife and my friends.
What do you think are some of the, well, because you, throughout your career, you've been at different institutions, different cultures. What were some of the ways they undermined their goals, their vision, initiatives, maybe not even be aware of it, without naming names, but, you know, maybe the audience could learn from?
Knowledge is a powerful tool. And I think that in some of my previous roles, in hindsight, I can see that knowledge was being withheld for a purpose, for a specific, let's say, not a very good reason, you know, like, other than to keep people in a certain role, in a place where they're not growing, where they're not succeeding, where they're not, you know, living out their all of their potential, because maybe it's fear that they will, you know, outgrow a particular leader. And I think that I've seen that externally, meaning not me, but I've seen that relationship play out amongst other people that I've worked with. I think I have seen it. I have experienced it myself. And I think that holds organizations back. I think it holds a lot of organizations back. I think that if you look at a great example is professional sports. The best offensive coordinator goes on to be a head coach, doesn't stay an offensive coordinator, you know. And in basketball, assistant coaches become head coaches, and head coaches become, you know, presidents and GMs. And in that pure meritocracy, which I think is sports, is probably, it's not perfect, but it's the purest meritocracy I can think of, where nothing is withheld. And when nothing is withheld, great things happen. And we see offenses that are, you know, designed and created that we as sports fans never have seen before, simply because one person was allowed to blossom and wasn't necessarily held back. And I think that in the corporate world, we could all learn from that. I don't know what it means for me. It means if I'm growing leaders and they're outgrowing me and moving on, then sure, that kind of, you know, means I got to start over with somebody else. But isn't that the best part?
Well, easy for someone of culture to say. Upward mobility. Well, you just don't want to chop them down?
Yeah, or hold them there because they serve you, and it serves you better to hold them there. I don't think that's the right way to go. And I also think that it's a pretty easy trap to fall into too.
Why?
Even for the people who are pretty self-aware, you know, if you're not paying attention, you might find yourself doing that.
Why?
Why? Because it's intoxicating to know that you have everything you need to continue to thrive personally, because you've put pieces in place that are just pumping out productivity for you. I think that's to know to have to start over. The idea of having to reteach, sometimes that's not attractive to people. So it's a trap you could fall into if you're not paying attention.
What kind of work ethic would you say is necessary in this time?
I don't think you have to work necessarily hard, although you have to be willing to. I think that in this time, I'll speak for mortgage, professionals right now. Hard work leaves a residue, right? We all know when we lay down at night, I worked hard that day. Maybe you spoke to a lot of people. Maybe you worked through a really difficult loan. If you went to the gym, if you worked hard. Hard work leaves a residue, but productivity does not leave a residue. So I think that you have to be willing to work hard, but you have to be willing to track and monitor and gauge your productivity. Otherwise, you are not going to be able to see where you're making progress and where you're not making progress. So work ethic is important, but a willingness to look at your not important but not urgent activities, gauge how well you are executing on those important but not urgent activities, and be willing to accept that you didn't do that great of a job that day on your important but not urgent activities, but and you only know that if you track it. I think that's more important right now than work ethic. Although
The bold statement.
Work ethic is important, don't get me wrong, but I think your willingness to track your productivity is more important right now, and it's surprising how many people are not willing to track their productivity.
Why do you think they're not?
Because I think when you track your productivity, it becomes a mirror. You can look at it and say, okay, did I do the things I committed to doing, the important but not urgent activities that I'm committed to? And if I didn't, then I got to kind of ask myself why. Did I get caught in the traps, the busy work traps? Did I allow myself to get pulled into things and meetings that I could have gotten out of if I was 100% intentional about meeting those commitments on my important but not urgent activities? And I think that's the hard part. We're pretty hard on ourselves. We judge each other. We judge ourselves harshly. And when we look at our day and we say, okay, here's the things I committed to and here's what I got done, you got to be willing to objectively look at that and say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to do better, or here's what I'm going to do different. But sometimes we have this tendency to like, man, why didn't I do it? And then you start running through all the reasons, and beating yourself up about it. And I think people want to steer clear of that, which they steer clear of the whole idea altogether. I think that's why.
In closing, what do you want the audience to take away from this conversation?
That's a tough one, Jay. I wish you gave me that one ahead of time. I could have prepared better. What do I want them to take away? Have fun. And if you're listening to this as a mortgage professional, then follow the recipe. You make sure they know you, make sure they like you, make sure they trust you, and from there have fun. And if you're not in the mortgage profession or in the real estate profession and listen to this, then good times come and go, and you just got to surround yourself with the right people like Jay, and life's a much nicer journey regardless.